Hey guys, I'm going to attempt to talk about a very difficult conversation. I'm sure everybody's grappled with it a little bit, but the whole sense of time and, like Einstein talking about theory of relativity and time not existing, and I don't know where I even hear some of this stuff from, but they seem very convincing and very difficult to understand. All at the same time. Anyway, so some other weirdness, just to kind of put them all out there, like everything happening at one time, and that all events are stacked on top of each other. And it's very difficult to wrap your head around that kind of stuff, so I just always put it out there as a reality that I may understand someday. And I certainly can't say that I totally understand it now. But I did have some insights about it, and some, really you don't wrap your brain around it, you wrap your emotions around it, you feel it, and you're like, oh, that really feels so strong. So now I'm going to try to put words to what I've felt, and, I'm using other people's words. I'm not the first person to point to this stuff, so it's not like I'm, anyway. Part of the benefit of this video may be for my own re-listening to it to help keep the feeling more alive, because I can't say I totally own all this yet. But anyway, one of the things I don't totally own that I've recently heard is that, I've talked about fear and, everything sort of goes back to either fear or love as a driving force. And so the twist on that is that fear really is, fear of what? What is fear of dying? What's fear of dying? So the explanation was given that fear is fear of time and being lost in time, or, and you could see how death could relate to the time fear. It's like, what am I going to go into that infinite, that whole concept of, we're infinite beings, or God is infinite, and all that type of stuff. So, okay, that's a long time after I die. Time doesn't seem all that warm and fuzzy. I'm like, what, I'm going to float around in space for eternity? Or, God forbid you should have that vision in your head of some suffering in hell. Hopefully you don't own that vision. But anyway, that vision's only there to steer you away from it. So you go, oh, that's not a very fun place. I think I'll move towards enlightenment. So it doesn't exactly exist. If you were to look at it, you can only hold it in your imagination, this fear of punishment and hell, if you want to. You can hold it in your imagination, and then it can seem very real. But if you ever were to look at it straight on, it would disappear, because there's no reality to it. It's just there to push you in the direction of enlightenment, which everyone's going, and so I don't have any fear about that. But I just feel for people who are stuck in that paradigm of they're being punished justly, and other people need punishment, and all this battle against good and evil and all that type of stuff. But anyhow, so moving on to another concept. This thought about a radio station, that all realities exist and all realities are playing like a radio frequency. You can change the dial and you can pick up different perceptions or different realities. And I really liked that sense, and I definitely own that, and I see where that could play out in life, and does play out. And so I've gotten to the point where I'm okay with other people having different stations, going different realities that they want to tune into. Like that concept of hell and God battling Satan and all that type of stuff. I agree there's a lot going on that we don't really understand, but I don't think it's a battle. I think it's a journey, maybe. But then if time doesn't exist, what's the point of the journey? So it all gets a little fuzzy at some level. And some people choose to just turn it all off at the beginning. Let's just not even turn this movie on. We're going to just walk away and move on to something concrete like matter and things I can touch, smell, taste. But really, if you even want to go into touch, smell, and taste, those are realities that are very bizarre. Everything's vibrating, so there's really no solidity to ourselves or anything around us. The vibration makes us feel like it's solid. Well, that's not reality either then, any more than time is a reality. So the other one is, your sight. It's not, we see in pictures like a movie, but the reality of it is it's vibrations, and it's colors come because there's infinite number of colors because there's an infinite number of vibrations. And so that's, I want to say hologram, but that's another story. But some people describe all this as a hologram, but I'm not that familiar with holograms, so it doesn't really resonate for me. But anyway, so if you could wrap your brain around the whole concept of things are a little squirrely here on life on Earth, and that time doesn't exist, and that everything's happening in the moment. A lot of spiritual people have talked about, like if you're focusing on your breath, I breathe in right now, I breathe out right now. They both happen now. So there's no time there. You have to see it, you have to experience it one at a time, but that's for me to perceive it. But really, everything happens in the now, in the moment. There is no past and future. I don't know. I say those words and I go, Okay, so let's just move on from that, because there's going to be levels we don't really get. But I like to hold, or at least encourage other people too, to hold on to things that are like, okay, let's keep moving forward, but I don't really totally get all of it exactly. But let's just say that like a radio station, there's many versions going out at the same time. What station do you want to dial into? What do you want to take in? What do you want to see, experience, whatever? Another way to look at time situation is like a movie. The whole movie is made when I'm watching it. It's shown to me sequentially so that I can experience it sequentially. But it's already made. The whole movie was done a year or so ago before I get to the theater and watch it sequentially. So you could say that all of existence is sort of like playing out as a movie, put in a dimension of time so that we could experience ourselves. I guess another concept I want to throw out there is sort of, the oneness. I think most religions sort of have that at some level, that we're all one, and we're one with God, and God is everything, and we're versions of God, possibly, depending on where your view is of things, and we're an expression of God, and I'm an expression of you, and you're an expression of me, and all that kind of stuff is thrown around, but I don't think anybody really, I didn't get it. A lot of people get it, but I held it, and I played with it. And so if there's multiple versions going on at the same time, what's explained to me but I don't totally own is that there are a million different versions of me, and that I can be a person who listened to a different frequency radio station, be a little more grounded about that. If I'm listening to country music all my life, which I don't listen to, I never grew up with country music, so I just don't really, not really drawn to that. So I don't listen to country music, and I don't really listen to rap either. So that would be two versions if that's what I was listening to all my life. If I was grown up in a house with country music and lived in the country and was uneducated, let's just say, to put some more pieces to the puzzle, uneducated living in the jungle, let's put it that way. If I'm uneducated living in the jungle, what would I look like? I would be I wouldn't really recognize myself, but it would be me, the version of me that lives in the jungle. I could be a shaman, or I could be, anything. That version of myself is happening at the same time. And there's another version of myself that's maybe very, very slightly different than me now, that maybe didn't make the choice to pursue figuring this whole time warp, non-existent time, everything happening at once reality. If I wasn't struggling with that and I chose to just stay, in my business and buried in work, that would be a different version of me. And that version is alive and existing. And the version that I'm experiencing today is existing. And the version of me living in the jungle is existing. And the version of me having that fear of the battle of heaven and hell, that's existing in me. All these versions of me are existing, just like all these radio stations are existing, and they're all happening at the same time. So that's a concept I don't really own, but I can tell it to you, so that's something. But let's keep going. So if I wanted to go visit another version of myself, they talk about, out in space, there's wormholes and there's time travel and things like that. So when you get outside of magnetic pull, then you don't have time. The time is warped by magnetic pull, and so if you don't have magnetic pull, then you have time. And they'll make statements like, I think Einstein had said that if you shoot a rocket off the planet Earth and it goes around the Earth and comes back, if it could be fast enough, it could arrive back before it took off. Because when it took off was more of a place in the movement of the planets than it was of time really existing. I don't know. That doesn't really... I've held that analogy in my head. I say it now and it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see how that happens. But let's just keep going. So we're playing with this concept of there's multiple versions of me going on simultaneously, depending on my choices. That's where free will comes in. This is an important point to get across. Free will. What is free will? Free will means I can be many versions of myself. And I can play with the concept of heaven and hell as a battle for my soul. And I can play with the enlightened guru, spiritual teacher. And I can play with the father, hardworking doer. And I can play with the athlete. And I can play with all of these versions of myself. They're all happening at the same time. I can dance between them. And it's my free will to play any of those parts I want to play. So, if I want to go visit those other parts of myself, how would I do that? How would time travel happen and things like that? So this is the part that I heard explained, and it really hit me so strong, and I was just like, wow, I've got to put this into a video so I can revisit it. So the point is, let me replace these pieces before I tell you the part that really hit me. I've always known that on some level we're all one. I'm supposed to love myself, I'm supposed to love others, I'm supposed to accept others, I'm supposed to whatever. But I also held an alternate version of I need to evolve, and I need other people to evolve, and I need to become enlightened, and I need to enlighten other people, and we need to all come together and create heaven on earth. But the reality is that getting back to that analogy, the many versions of myself all going on simultaneously. And some of them are so strange from who I am appearing to you in this camera that I wouldn't recognize myself in them. And some are so similar to who I am right now in this camera that I would immediately feel like I'm looking at myself. So there's that extreme of versions of myself out there. And I don't need to time travel, because they're all playing out in everyone around me. That there's only one person in the room, it's me. And there's only one person in your room, it's you. You don't exist without me looking at you. And I don't exist without you looking at me. There's only us. There's only me. There's only one. So what do you do with that? Well, you have to expand your conscious a little bit to understand, to get a deep sense of what that means. But at the surface, you certainly have to accept others, love others, like that's a version of myself. I just found, little Danny walking down the street as a very scared, angry, person who thinks that heaven and hell are the battle going on for my soul, and he's got to go out and crush all the evil that's happening around him. That's how I know that model isn't correct, because how am I supposed to be killing off evil if I'm supposed to be loving and accepting of myself and others around me? They're all perfect. They're all beautiful. You just have to expand your consciousness to see that, and see that there's no need to change anybody. And then once I realize there's nothing I need to change, and that this is all happening in my mind, just like vibrations or colors and things are transferred in my eyeballs and converted into a picture, this time warp is converted into my life and someone else's life, and it seems very separate. I'm okay with that. Leave it separate. I don't look at flowers and say, oh, that's a great vibration. I look at the beauty of the flower. I look at my life as the beauty of my life, and I seem and feel different and separate from everyone else. But I can love everyone else. I can accept them as they are. I can look at them as wow, I'm experiencing a version of myself. Oh, that version of myself is stealing from me. Or that version of myself is beating me up. Or that version of myself seems to be running what I thought was someone else's government into the ground. And I'm okay with that, because they're just versions of myself. There's just one of us in the room. There's only one of us on the planet. There's only oneness of the whole universe, out expanded, experiencing versions of itself. Now that concept I knew, and people have been telling me that since I was a kid. Oh, it's, God experiencing a version of himself in you and me and all of us individuals. But I still feel like, what version does he want me to be? I got to fight for this and that. He wants me to work on these people and fix that and stop the evil and all that kind of stuff. That could be played out from that version of there's only one of us, and that God is experiencing himself through us as individuals. But it's a new concept to say those other versions are me, because they're at different radio frequencies, the same versions of myself. I can choose to be those people, or I can choose to be the Dan Hicks who's alive right now, or I can choose to be the Einstein who doesn't seem to be alive in this version of me, but it's certainly happening at the same time. If time doesn't exist, I can be Einstein, I can be whoever, all at the same time. That starts to get into weird stuff. I don't know how to explain that part. But anyway, just trying to expand my consciousness so I can understand this stuff a little bit better, because science doesn't prove anything that we don't already understand first. First comes the insight, first comes the vision, first comes the, if you look deep into any great scientists or people who have given the planet Earth some gift, they perceived it in their mind first, and then they figured out how to teach it to other people, and then science said, okay, now we're going to prove it. And then we all sort of accept it into our consciousness. But this is a concept that is being accepted into our consciousness slowly, and I think it'll be beneficial to us. I know it's been beneficial to me. I am much more loving of myself and accepting of what's going on around me. And I feel like, okay, I don't need to go do anything. I don't need to go fix anyone. I don't need to save myself. I don't need to save anyone else. But then from that point, you say, but who do I want to be? What do I want to experience? And what do I want to do? And you start to see that there's happier versions of myself I can go chase. And I think I'll go chase my happier versions. I'm not going to worry about trying to make my unhappy versions of myself happy by going backwards and trying to rectify things that I don't have control over, like others. Instead, I'm going to just chase the happier versions of myself. They're out there too. They all exist. So, love yourself. That's what I always seem to end with. And this is no different. Love yourself, and good luck on your journey.